It's a joy to start things off because if I say anything weird, you can just fix it throughout the day. So that's good. I love that. Yeah, but this is special. Today we're going to talk about Daniel. We're going to talk about how he's an incredible example of being extraordinarily godly and successful in the workplace. We're going to talk about that. But before we dive into that, I want to just make sure we lay out some basics so we're all on the same page. 3 words that are connected today. Word number 1, success. Word number 2, Christian. Word number 3, work or workplace. So connected to each of these words, success. We are talking about being successful in the workplace today as Christians, but we are not shying away from that. We want to be influential and successful in our workplaces like Daniel was in his environments, and yet we want to make sure as Christians we have the right strategies for going about that process. Most people define success as out there success. Out there success meaning huge piles of cash, great fast promotions, accolades, praises. Wow, you're so amazing. You know, all that sort of success. I call that low-level success. It is success, but I call it low-level success or unsatisfactory success. The kind of success that we tend to be aiming for is much, much higher. As Jesus says, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world and yet forfeit his soul? We are aiming higher for that. What good is huge piles of cash or great promotions at work while your marriage is going through an epic crash? While your children are turning away from Jesus, where you wake up one day and you're like, how did I get here? I don't even like the person that I've become. I'm embarrassed. We're not looking for that kind of just out there success. We're not downplaying out there success. That's fine, that's good, but we want more than just out there success. And as I say so often, true success or true everything, it begins here. You can't skip the here and just jump to the there. Yes, we want to be successful there, but you can't skip the here. And everybody's like, oh, I would never skip the here. Okay, tell that to yourself on the day you wake up very stressed about what's going on there and how the inner urgency to deal with the there. And so I'm going to skip the here this morning because the there is the crisis. Like, what is our practice at the end of the day when it comes to here versus there? And I would say we know that here is important, but we skip to there because of the crises or the urgency. But really, the attentiveness to here is so key and it's so central in Daniel's story. Inescapably central in Daniel's story. Anyway, so we're talking about success, and we're aiming for a more holistic view of this, not just their success, but here and their success. The second word, Christian, and the third word is work. And again, we want to be successful like Daniel in the workplace, but the question is not just these 3 words, but what is the path? And there tends to be 2 different paths. One, the path to success, starting with work, the red path, but being a Christian and then moving towards success, but work is the first start. Or the second path, the green path, where it starts as I'm a Christian, going to work, and then hitting to success. Now, obviously we know the right answer is the green path. In fact, that was even on the slide, a dead giveaway. I try and keep it really simple. Whenever I'm using colors and you're like, ooh, what's Brian aiming for? Is red the right answer or green the right answer? Just think Star Wars lightsaber colors and you'll be figuring it out really quickly. But so again, there's a red path and the green path, and we would like it to be all at once. No conflict between the work and Christian and success and just having all those work together. And often that is the case. But there's going to be some strategic moments in everyone's life. where it's not going to just all work together easily. And in those moments, you have to choose what path, where am I really starting from? Am I, first of all, a Christian going into the workplace, or is my work the number one thing, and I'm trying to be a Christian, and I want to be a Christian in that? And again, the right answer is the green path, or first of all, Christians, but the common answer is the red path, even for Christians. I can just say that. That's fine. It's the great challenge, because the red path screams at us, this is the time-proven path to success. This is it. If you don't loosen up just for a moment in your integrity, or just for a moment, if you just close your eyes at this one tiny moment, then if you don't do that, then you're never going to be as successful as you would hope to be at this particular moment. In fact, you might lose out, or you might miss out. That's the temptation. Daniel, though, he's always taking the green path. So let's look at Daniel, because he is extraordinarily successful in the workplace. And yet, there are only 5 moments that in Daniel's long life of leadership that are recorded. Five stories. Most of his life doesn't seem to be a lot of conflict between his godliness, following God, and thriving in the workplace. But 5 times things come to a head where he had to be very clear in himself if he is red path or if he's green path. In Daniel chapter 1, Daniel has what most people refer to as an integrity check or a character check. It's actually a little bit more than that, but here's a picture of the first story, just in case you forget it. Broccoli is the answer. But at this moment, Daniel has been taken away from his family and taken off into captivity, and he's being trained to be a wise man, a magi in Babylon, one of the wise men. And there's a way, a time-proven path that magi or wise men are trained. That this is a path that's been laid out through over 1,000 years, going back to Egypt, going through the empire of Assyria, and now into Babylon. There is a way that you train the wise men, the wisest empire advising people in the nation. And the way forward, the way that you do this is connected to not neglecting nutrition as well. Nutrition, what they're eating. I mean, if you're trying to be highly successful in any field, you're going to be hearing about nutrition, right? Like it's part of it. And then you're looking at the Bible and Daniel, and there's nothing in the Old Testament that prohibits wine, praise the Lord. And yet, because the king's wine would have been dedicated to the king's idol, Bel in this case with Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel has an integrity check. Daniel did not dedicate the wine to Bel. Daniel did not dedicate the meat to Bel. But it was anyways. And so will he compromise by eating this food dedicated to other gods? Will he make this little compromise? But even more, the question is, if he follows God's way, which is directly opposite to the time-proven wisdom way, proven for 1,000 years of this is how it works, will God bless him beyond what would naturally be expected if he walks this path? And his path, Daniel's path, comes to a crossroads where he has to decide between the red path and the green path. He can't pick both at this moment. Is he willing to walk the green path, which looks to be the path of less success, naturally? And again, maybe for 3 reasons for less success. What's at stake? Because he won't be on the time-proven program. Number 2, he's going to be that guy, the guy that's just not on board with become. This is how you become a wise man. Like, come on, dude, just get with the program. And also potentially the path of more weakness or less health, less protein or whatever. And again, it's these moments where the red path seems like the needed path for success. You are going to have moments where you feel like the red path is needed in order to be the most successful. I think there's a fear in a lot of our hearts, especially if we really want to be successful, that if we don't compromise in these moments like everyone else is going to, that we won't be as successful as other people are going to be. It's not the case, but that's the strong feeling that we tend to believe in those moments. Daniel, in chapter 1, verse 8, it says, "But Daniel was determined to not defile himself by eating the king's food and wine given to him by the king." Daniel was determined, come what may, I am not going to defile myself. Sometimes the greatest success paths are via the most counterintuitive and yet faith-filled, God-honoring, God-following, God-blessed paths. So we see in Daniel somebody who is this. He says, the counterintuitive path of godly integrity. That is what Daniel is walking. And sometimes we feel like the path to integrity is ruin. The path of integrity is ruin instead of success. Ron Frost, when Ron Frost was a corporal in the Army, he was serving in the office of a lieutenant colonel. And he would say about this situation, he would say, as high as the heavens are above the earth, so a lieutenant colonel is to a lowly corporal. And when he was working in the office one day, he picks up the phone and the colonel is on the phone calling for the lieutenant colonel. And he says to the lieutenant colonel, the colonel's on the phone, he wants to speak to you. And the lieutenant colonel says, tell him I'm not in. And little Corporal Frost says, okay, takes a deep breath. This is not a great moment in my life here. And he says, although it seems like a small moment, he says, well, then, sir, you're going to need to step outside. And he just, the disbelief on the lieutenant colonel's face at the moment, like, this is such a small thing. Just tell him, and that's what he even says, just tell him I'm not here. Well, then, sir, you're going to need to step outside because I'm not going to lie for you. Again, this does not seem like the path to promotion in this moment. But he said, I'm not going to lie to you, or I'm not going to lie for you, but I'm also not going to lie to you. And although the guy was mad, and he storms over to the phone, picks up the phone, and talks to the colonel, it wasn't too long before he gets this promotion to work with more sensitive data. Because he's like, okay, this is somebody who can be trusted to not cave into the pressure of the moment. But there is the moment. There is the moment of testing where it just feels like this, we need to conform, we need to compromise. This is what is needed to happen at this particular moment. And maybe it seems like a small thing, just tell them I'm not in. But we're called to walk the path of counterintuitive integrity. When it comes to be a Christian in the workplace, the first word is Christian. Christian. And the second word is workplace. But again, if you want to be highly successful, it begins here. It begins here. For you and me, success begins here in our hearts with our commitment to God, to God's way, to God's path, his way of integrity and godliness and compromise. There's a way that seems right to man, says the Proverbs, but in the end it leads to death. Don't skip here. Everything begins here. Now, there's a few other stories connected to Daniel, like the time that in chapter 2, there's a big crisis, and all of Daniel and his 3 friends, it looks like all their training is going to come to nothing. In their case, because they're going to be put to death. And so what did they do? Well, yes, they prayed, but this is something I hope you take away from this. They're not just praying, they're seeking God's revelation. And there's a distinction here. Daniel's path to success doesn't just include prayer, it includes revelation and direction seeking prayer. Revelation and direction seeking prayer. As in, God, here's my crisis. Here's my challenge. Here's my situation. Not just, would you please help me as I go through my day? God, would you tell me what you want me to do about this situation? Would you reveal to me the path forward? Would you bring revelation? I'm seeking your direction. I remember my father, who was a president and owner of a multi-generation welding and manufacturing business in Seattle area. Every morning, I would see him with his green hardback Bible open. I would see him there at the kitchen table, eyes closed, praying, a notebook open, as he's not just reading the Bible, not just praying, but taking notes on what he feels like God is saying, especially in the hard moments of life and leadership. And things go up and down, and it's so often in the welding and manufacturing industry. Friends, make sure you get the right things great. Not just there, but get the right things great. If you want to be maximum successful, if you want someone, then you want to be someone who's great at prayer, at revelation and direction seeking prayer. And so here's my pro tip for you. My pro tip. If I could encourage you to grow in one single area this year, I would encourage you to take another step from wherever you're at to learn how to sharpen your discernment skills with God. To learn how to become more clear and more confident when God might be giving you direction and guidance. I consider this one of the most strategic and important skills for anyone who wants to follow God well in their life in any field, on any path. Even after all these years of being a Christian leader, I'm still seeking to grow in this area. Wherever I'm at now, I want to keep pushing forward and sharpening these skills. How can I know if this is God's leading for me at this moment? How can I know if this risky path is me or if it's God? Growing in discernment is a major, major practical life-impacting skill to learn and to refine and to keep growing in. Why? Because you're going to want to know what the all-knowing God sees is coming. You're going to want to hear from him who knows the future about which path to take and what's the right response to the moment. I see Jesus' responses in so many awkward moments, and I marvel at them, but I'm also aware that he's quite connected to what God is revealing to him about the situations and his responses. When you think about Daniel, and I think we might miss this, but when we think about Daniel, we think about the extraordinary success that he has. The thing we know most about him is his hearing revelation from God. I mean, he has this moment where he gets this dream interpretation for Nebuchadnezzar. He has other moments where he understands things. And yet the last many chapters of the book is he gets this revelation from God, and he doesn't understand it at first, but he continues to seek it. And that's when he's old. He's still trying to figure out what God's saying. And then he gets this revelation from God, and then he gets revelation from God is so much at the heart of Daniel's life and experience. It's not just his integrity, it's his ability to receive revelation and direction and to hear from God and his growing of seeking to understand it. So, pro tip there. Okay, so speeding up, in Daniel chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. Daniel gives him some terrible news. So we're talking about tactful truth speaking with godly advice. Very key. I believe that you've been strategically placed in your workplaces and as an asset. And one of the things that you can bring is God's heart, whether it's accepted or not, or God's direction to your workplaces. And, Daniel is working for, and I was going to say insane. He is actually literally insane for a moment there, or he's about to become insane. But he's working for someone who's erratic at best. And it was very unstable, dangerously impulsive, and yet he still courageously gives him the advice. You should humble yourself before God. Anyways, I believe you're placed where you are on purpose for that. We won't make any more points, but Daniel chapter 5, Daniel's about 85 years old at this point. Same themes, same things. He's receiving revelation from God that other people aren't getting so that he can interpret the moment and he can speak into the moment. Now, again, he's been honing this skill for 70 years now. Daniel chapter 6, when he's about 85 to 90 years old, Daniel has another integrity check. And you know the story. He keeps praying 3 times a day as he always has. And as a result, he gets thrown into the lion's den. And I highlight these when Daniel's older because as we age, we experience success, hopefully, or we experience challenges, hopefully, but we keep facing the decision on which of these 2 paths we're on. It's not just a young person's thing. It's not just a starting out thing. But when it comes to God, we need to continue to stay on these paths. And you're going to get these moments of integrity checks or challenges all throughout your life. And some people, they start to coast. Man, I made the hard decisions when I was younger, but now there's too much at stake when I'm older. And so I'm going to take the red path, but I won't say that. It's a challenge all of our life. So I love that about Daniel. You see it all the way until he's old. If prayer, though, and integrity haven't been the strongest points in your life, I want to give you my best advice. Never stop restarting the right things. Never stop restarting the right things. I think it's really important to never let past failures or negative experiences or even repeated failures, and I tried to have integrity, but I blew it. Or I tried to start being a praying person, and I just couldn't keep it up, and so I'm never going to be able to do that. We all know that perseverance and tenacity and this never giving up attitude, it's powerful when it comes to success, and it's also powerful when it comes to prayer and when it comes to following God. I mean, how many times did I try and start to have a consistent prayer life and fail? How many times did I know it was the right thing to do and give it a go for a moment and it didn't just keep going? And so then on the 12th of August, 2012, I had another one of those restart moments, and my expectation of myself was through the floor. It's never going to last, but here we go again. But that restart lasted, and here we are. I think it's important to never stop restarting the right thing. Don't let the past failures or self-disappointments keep you from starting again. So with Daniel, we see him walking the green path where God is first in his life, the counterintuitive path of godly integrity, the revelation and direction-seeking prayer, tactful truth-speaking with godly advice. And I believe this is the path to thriving in the workplace. I believe it begins here. Here. Behind closed doors, with God. And when I look at Daniel's life, I see someone who put God and God's ways first all the way through his life. And his success was unrivaled in his generation and really in most generations. Let's have a time of personal reflection. I think we have some QR codes. There we go. Shout out to the 90s and QR codes. And so I believe you scan the personal reflection thing. Apparently, you're going to also have a time to ask questions. I tried to make sure we didn't have enough time for that. Sadly, we do. And so personal reflection questions are going to be something like this. Where in your life or leadership are you currently facing a red or green path decision, and which direction are you leaning? I know you know the right answer, but this is a true moment here. Truth moment. And number 2, which of Daniel's 3 priorities, godly integrity, direction-seeking prayer, and tactful truth-speaking, needs a restart or potentially a boost up in your life right now? We'll go there.
Thank you, Brian. That was 3 profound truths, and it certainly made me think. It reminded me of a client I had earlier this year, and I was the jam in the sandwich between a very big bank and a company that they had acquired, and I was trying to help the CEO, and it wasn't going well. And at one point, I realized I needed to tell the truth, and so I wrote him a diagnostic, and I said, I've done this diagnostic for you. Would you like it? And he was struggling. You know, he was a CEO. The company was growing, and I gave him this diagnostic, and a week later the contract was finished. And I felt when you were speaking, I was feeling it's the right thing to do, but success sometimes is not what we expect, isn't it? And I wanted to encourage you with that. So yeah, we have this reflection time, and the QR codes are on your table, and just take a moment to think about what God said to you through that message. And we also have questions that we're going to hear as well. What did you think, Gabby, to Brian's message?
Yeah, it's just such a reminder that we need to really just sit and hear what God wants to say in our lives. Like you said, there's so many things to do out there, but the Bible says there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it ends in destruction. So sometimes what we think is the right thing to do, because we've got to rush and do loads of things, isn't the right thing. So just sitting down, like you said, your dad would just sit down and hear what God is telling him and write that down. That is so, so true for us in our lives. It's just that reminder. Yeah. On the questions, thank you everyone for submitting the questions. So we can go with the first one, Pastor Brian. The first question is, how does one grow in godly discernment?
That is the question I was hoping somebody would ask.
Good.
First of all, thank you for listening. Okay, so growing in godly discernment. I have walked this path so many times, and I'll tell you some things that have helped me. I have read about it. The number one book that has helped me grow in discernment was called The Discerner by James Goll. Now, The Discerner, what was helpful for me is it expanded my expectations of what I was listening for. And that was extremely helpful for me. So making me alert to maybe different ways that God speaks. Like I would be like, oh, I want God to speak this way to me. I want to be there. I want to have my Bible open, and I want the words to reverberate in my skull. Right? That's what I want. However, sometimes it's not quite like that. I remember walking through Kelvin Grove Park here and asking God for clarity on something that for a couple months, like, God, I need understanding of this situation. And as I'm walking through Kelvin Grove Park, I'm so frustrated because this irritating old song is going through my mind. And like, stop distracting me, song. Get out of my mind. And I'm fighting with this, and I'm trying to hear from God about this thing. And then I had recently read the book The Discerner. I'm like, oh wait, maybe God's not always just speaking to me in one particular way. And I realized, oh, what is this old song? Oh, okay. Oh, this song, I think it's from the Bible. Where is this in the Bible? Oh, it's in Psalm 23. Okay, what's? Oh, and it kept driving me right to the very specific answer of the prayer that I was praying. I thought I was being distracted, and so part of the process of growing in discernment is being alert to more ways. And so when I read The Discerner, I'm like, wow, it's laying out things I'd never even thought about before. Ways to be alert to the leadings of God, and I like to read things that are a little bit bigger than my current thoughts. I mean, I'm an adult. I'm sure you're an adult. You can filter and discern as you're reading different books. So anyways, I definitely lean into that area. But the number one way, I do not believe that you can have much hope in growing quickly in this area if you are not writing things down. If you don't have a practice of writing down what might possibly be from God, you're not going to be able to put it all together half the time. Because when you're writing things down, A, you're not going to forget it, and you think, I'll never forget this, but you will. And B, I believe that most of the discernment process is building a mosaic of bits. Oh, this little thought from God, or this little moment here, or that little thing here, or this song, or that word, or this scripture, that person said this to me, and then I'm writing them all down. I don't know what's God and what's not, but then when I zoom back and I look at my notes, the picture starts to come together. This is how God is guiding me. So you've got to be in a mosaic building mindset. You've got to be writing things down and being more open to different things. So, I mean, those are some quick thoughts on that.
It's great. It's really helpful to get that mosaic idea of not looking for one silver bullet of message to say,
I hinted at that with my dad as well. Like his Bible, his eyes closed in prayer, and then a notebook. Those three things.
That's good. So we've got quite a few questions now, and I guess one of the ones here being voted for, your thoughts on Christians, I guess, a little bit afraid to declare their faith at work, and what risks and opportunities would you say there are in being known as a Christian?
I'd say be inspired by the next generation. I'm seeing Gen Z coming into my church with shirts that say, Jesus saves, all across the back. And I'm like, wow. I mean, there is an audacity out there, and we have grown up in, I'm Gen X, and Gen Millennial, whatever, surrounded by a bunch of millennials in my life. But man, what a timid group we tend to be. And I'm just like, you know what? This next generation is just out there and going for it. And, I've been in workplaces like, I used to work at Safeway, right? Which doesn't exist anymore. But we used to work at Safeway, and they were very clear. You can't talk about this stuff. And I'm like, you know what? That's okay. We're putting it out there. So anyways, I say if you're struggling with timidity on that, I mean, you know what verse I'm going to quote. God's not giving us a spirit of timidity. I'm just like, it's time to put it out there, friends. It's come what may. Yeah, I'm all about Jesus. It's the number one thing in my life. And okay, if you wanna let me go for that, that's the path. But again, live boldly. What in the world?
Live boldly.
That's my free advice.